Welcome back to the F3 Northeast Wake podcast. This is Blake Anderson, Money Pit, and this week, I've got with me Derek Wolf, Dowry. Dowry, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Absolutely. Money Pit's honor, and I appreciate the request to join in. So it's a pleasure.
Good. Glad you're doing it from a vacation spot. So I'm glad that you squeezed this in. Hey, before we go any further, how did you get your name?
So it was funny, actually, at the farm on a Saturday after I just finished a workout that Floppy led that was on the famous street hill. We did a series of 11s, first time that I really didn't like that number. And basically at the end of before COT, asked, what I've done, concerts, stuff like that. And I said, I have 5 kids. 5 girls.
Oh, Lord.
And the first thing out of Funny's mouth was dowry, I believe.
Yeah. That's it. You're done. Get back in the circle,
and
right?
I went back and yeah, that's how it stuck.
5 girls. Holy moly. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't raise them all from birth, but, it's the path that God has put me on, and I wouldn't change a thing for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wouldn't know what to do with a boy, honestly.
Good deal. All right. Well, Pax, this week in your Q source book, we're in the quadrant live right, and it's Q2.6, and it's correction. And Dredd defines correction as zealously advocating for shared virtue. And he says that the high impact male preaches what he practices. And I'm always looking for packs who live out the concept. And so, Dowry, one way I've seen you live this out, and we all have, is, and I'll just jump off with this, is your steadfastness to the flag and your steadfastness to the Pledge of Allegiance. And not everybody does that. And it's not necessarily even a all F3 kind of tradition, but it's something for you. And I see you living out that virtue when you do that. So I'd love to know like where that came from, what inspired you to do that, and how you just see this concept just in general before we dive into the chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it really stemmed from elementary school. I mean, it was something we did after the announcements, and it just stuck, and I appreciated it then. And a lot of F3 has the flag part of it's their MO. So why not take a moment to just pay tribute to what it stands for? And, growing up, having the Pledge of Allegiance from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade, it was just, and it's kind of embedded in you. And the more you get older, the more you appreciate it, what it stands for, what it means. And then, I grew up kind of around my grandfather, who retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. Wow. And had a lot of respect for him and his actions, how he acted around others. He wasn't a man of many words, but you literally could just, it's one of your grandfathers or one of those people that you can just watch and you just know exactly what to do next. And, so I have a lot of appreciation for that. And he, there was always a flag at his house. And he always taught me how to fold a flag properly, how it should be illuminated at night, protected from the weather. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I started it. But I think, honestly, Green Thumb did it at a Q that he was leading once. And I was like, I really like that. And so I probably borrowed it from him and just kept it going as much as I can whenever I Q.
You said something really intriguing just now. I'd love to press into a little bit. You said, you looked at your grandfather and just his presence and looking at him, you knew what to do next. So sounds like a man who was like living virtue, who had a way about him that he was an advocate for shared virtue, and he inspired you to live a certain way just by being around him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was always respectful around our family. Just, you know, like I said, a man of many, of small, not a lot of words, but he loved his workshop. And I can remember going there as a kid, and he was always willing to show me how to do something. It was just he kind of lived a lifestyle that appreciated each day. So he had the humility. He just instilled a sense of comfort and trust
Hmm.
immediately. He's just one of those you can just look at for someone and go, he's a good dude, or he's a good guy, or that's a good person, right off the bat, kind of deal. So I just, yeah, a lot of my uh, how I act, kind of, believe it or not, is from him, and a little bit from my dad too.
Yeah, I absolutely can. I'm just you say this and I'm thinking about in this chapter, Dredd talks about Goo Nation. He's referenced Goo Nation in the book before, and that's just culture that doesn't have a rudder, that's always looking for the easy way out, that points blame, shifts blame, that kind of thing. And he's really proposing that the high impact male lives in the face of Goo Nation and is really stands for something. And Goo Nation, or the culture at large, finds comfort from not being called out, finds comfort from not having a backbone, finds comfort for not having to have courage. Yet here you are saying, and I recognize this in other men as well, that actually we find comfort in the presence of strong men, in the
Yes.
presence of men that stand for something rather than men that give us a pass on everything.
Yep. Yep. I mean, a man of character speaks more than how. I mean, you say strength, but I think the strength is a lot of it is in his virtues. Uh, how he carries himself, for sure, is definitely, and he's not scared
Right.
to display that, which is huge. I think that's a big component with having the courage, and ability to say, that's wrong or that's right, and stand behind it. And like Dred says, preach what you practice. So I love the way he
Yeah.
puts that.
Yeah. Man, just I'm just thinking, I mean, I don't know your grandfather, but just the way you describe him is inspiring me. I think oftentimes we think about when we need to correct someone that sometimes we're afraid to do that. And but we haven't thought about the level of the comfort that we provide those around us when we're willing to stand for the virtue, when
Mm-hmm.
we're upholding the guardrails and the culture of righteousness. Because though we might call someone on misbehavior, we're also that culture defends the right of all. You know what I mean? And provides safety through that strength. And it's strength that's not that doesn't bully, like the chapter would say, but it's strength that has mercy and justice and love.
That you just hit the word right there. That four-letter word is love,
Hmm.
and it's agape love. It's
Hmm.
not, I love the lake. I love a good steak. It's love, like I love my kids. I love my life. I love my wife. I love God. I love Jesus.
Hmm.
It's that kind of love that really is the cornerstone of making correction,
Yes.
not being scared to correct somebody, have the ability to trust and make it happen. So that, yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
it's like that love that's undergirded with eternal truth,
yeah.
right? And so let's I want to just bring a little bit of the chapter into what we're saying, because we're dancing all around it, and maybe some packs haven't had a chance to read the chapter yet. But that we've heard the phrase that you've got to practice what you preach, and Dred says in this one that this is about preaching what you practice. This is about willing to stand up for something. This is about willing to be vocal about the things that are important to you. If you've been reading this book and you've been building it like blocks of a foundation under your life, by the time you get to this place, you stand for things. There are things that are important to you. Your character has been built and forged. And so at this point, it's time to be willing to be vocal about what that is, what those virtues are that you stand for, and bringing those others around that virtue. I want to read just this small passage and then just get your take on it. So it's from the chapter. The high impact male's positive habits are what he develops through the get right. Together with his ethics, they reflect and reinforce shared virtues of groups which he is a member. These are the essentials: general and specific virtues that cannot be compromised without harming the group, because there must be unity in the essentials. And the high impact male puts them into practice in his daily life through his guardrails. For those essentials that are threatened by his blind spots, he seeks accountability from his shield lock to keep him right. Just thoughts about that passage, and putting the get right underneath you that empowers you to be able to be a high impact male and then bring kind of virtue into your life.
Yeah, I think that high impact man is putting himself in other high impact men, so he has the. I think like Dredd says, you kind of have this is correction is possible with people that you have similar type of uh, goals or aspirations, or um,
Hmm.
being a better man, like F3 is trying to promote for all of us. So I think that is a key to making it happen. So a high impact man does that on his own, but he puts himself among others to make it a reality and to have that accountability, like you said,
Hmm.
to be pointed out. He's not scared. There's no
Yeah.
shame. With being he if he gets called out, he knows they're doing it respectfully.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, so Jed says, correction requires courage, and then which you've been absolutely making the point for, but he also says that correction is the combination of candor and wisdom. And I'd
yeah,
love to hear you talk about that and maybe even pull in kind of the role model of your grandfather's. Just seems to be just such an awesome archetype for this conversation. What he represents. I think when I hear you describe that, I hope that my grandchildren think of me that way. You know what I mean?
right,
I
exactly.
want my funeral to respect and honor. I would hope that I would be thought of like that, right? So he's the archetype of correction, which means there's candor, honesty, but there's wisdom and love that go with that.
Hmm. Yeah. So with my grandfather, he was a caring soul, and it didn't matter who you were, nationality, creed, you were equal in his eyes. And I assume that's obviously from his upbringing. He kind of grew up a little affluent,
Mhm.
but he never took that to say he's better than the next person. And I think that humility is really what's kind of taken a hold on me with that. So his wisdom of seeing where his past was and making each day moment a better than it was yesterday is just you kind of have to take a step back. So I think the wisdom of trying not to figure everything out at once and having the ability to pause.
Hmm.
My grandfather was definitely, he was, like I said, he was not a man of many words, but when he did say something, everyone listened. And
Mm.
it was kind of just that's just how it was. And there were a lot of my cousins and um, their daughters and son would go to him to seek help, and he would without question help them out. And it was sometimes a lot of it was monetarily,
Hmm.
um, but he had a giving heart. So yeah, that is something that a lot of people have nowadays. So I do I appreciate that. And his legacy is something that I remember at his. I mean, you don't want it to be at your funeral per se, but you kind of do want to have that legacy to maybe begin there or prior to, so that you are doing it for yourselves. Like you said, you want your grandchildren to have someone like my grandfather to look up to.
Yeah. So let's make this practical for a second and just help Pax understand what this like looks like lived out. I think it's really easy to talk in generalities. It's really easy to see it in the life of a larger than life people, like on the movies or in books or a grandfather that's talked about. But your grandfather didn't probably wake up and start doing this in his old age. Like this was the way that he lived. Like we've this is formulated through the way we lived, and this is a daily practice, right? There are
Right.
moments that we have to step into where we've got to provide correction in a moment. But oftentimes this is also just the way in which we live. And so, maybe we can just share what that looks like in our lives, and maybe we start to open the eyes of our packs to see maybe either where the moments that they're shying away from, or the moments that they're not taking, full advantage of. But, correction is such an important thing. If you're a father, if you're a husband, if you're an employer, if you're a leader, you in the business world, you are being looked up to. And there are people in your life who they need to know that they can trust that you have a moral compass, that you have standards that aren't wavering, and that you can provide the right correction when needed, but that it's going to be steadfast and it's not just going to be floating with the wind in whatever mood you're in.
Right. I think there has to be a standard,
Hmm.
a philosophy that's ingrained, that's kind of your will go mission statement for your family. But I mean, for me, a big correction that I had to do with my girls is if they came to me with a question or a concern or something that happened, one of the best things a dad can do is just listen. Sometimes you don't have to say anything.
Yeah, right.
And that, like you just said, they want to look up to you, but sometimes they respect that you literally listened to them and took the time to do that rather than going, well, I wouldn't have done that. Or maybe you
Right.
should talk to this person. Just listen to them and let it soak in a little bit. And then maybe approach them later. If it's a day or an hour or a week, that you can bring it back up. So then they remember that you actually listened to them and you remember what they talked about. So yeah, definitely that would be just listen.
Yeah, man, I love that. Stephen Covey says that with people, fast is slow and slow is fast, and is also along with that's old phrase that no one care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And so we think about correction, and in our heads, we see something out of order, and we might want to go correct it right away. But the question we've got to ask ourselves is, one, we've got to preach, we practice, we've got to have the courage to step in the moment. But is the person ready to receive the correction?
Yeah.
Because it'll be a completely wasted effort if
It could
you
be a wasted
just
effort. Yeah. And you can make it matters worse.
you can make it so worse. You just charge the field and you're going to correct that thing versus holding your tongue, giving that person a place to maybe talk it out. You've built their trust just by listening, letting
Hmm.
them get all the way. And so then if you give them that room to really talk through their deal, hopefully a lot of times you give them space and whether it's your child or your spouse or an employee, you give them enough room and then they'll eventually tell on themselves. They'll correct themselves in
Yeah.
it, and you oftentimes won't even have to do it.
Yep.
But even if you do, you've built that trust by giving them space so that when you do speak, they're ready to hear it and it can
Yep.
actually make a difference.
That is key. Yep. It's just when you like I said, my grandfather, when he spoke, people stopped and listened. And that's why I think, they valued what he represented. And I think for a PAX, for, a him, it's just a matter of sometimes you don't know how to fix everything and realizing that and swallowing your pride. I think we talked about that last week with Poppy and accountability and um, just understanding that you can be wrong sometimes and it's okay. Some of the greatest values in life are the ones that you made mistakes on, so you can learn
Right.
from them. Yep. If you go in life and you have no issues, is that a good life?
Well, I don't, I mean, are you even really trustworthy? I mean,
Right.
we trust people who know what they're talking about, though, but
Yeah.
the only reason people know what they're talking about normally is because they've fallen or failed in an
Yep.
area they learned the hard way
Yep.
and they internalize the lesson, right? And that's where so much of that virtue is built within us. It's through the failure and the lesson learned that it becomes a part of that character that can stand straight and can stand strong in the midst of prevailing winds of culture.
Yep. Absolutely. It is. I mean, knowledge is wisdom, and there's a saying. I don't remember how. I'm gonna probably misquote this, but you can't have uh, wisdom without knowledge.
Mhm.
You have to have that experience to gain the wisdom from. And yeah, so I think that's important. And sometimes there's people that have a lot of wisdom that sometimes it's not good wisdom.
Yeah,
So it's being
that's right.
that.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. I had no idea that you were going to bring this powerful figure of your grandfather. What was his name, by the way?
Alfred Wolf,
And she
Lieutenant
passed?
Colonel Alfred J. Wolf.
Is he passed?
He has passed. Yeah, it's been almost 11 years. It's
Lieutenant
been a while.
Colonel Alfred J. Wolf.
He was
Well,
in the,
what an inspiration. I'm so happy to hear about him, and I'm just inspired, to think about a life well lived. And I think that's how you know your life's well lived, the way that people talk about what you meant to them. You know what I mean? And clearly he meant something to you, and now he gets to mean something to us as he, becomes our role model. So thank you for sharing. Well, Dara, before we close, I just want to tell you, I just want to thank you for coming on, but I just want to
yeah, man.
affirm you as a leader in our community. I see you as a man who, though it quiet at sometimes, is confident, that you're virtuous, that you're loving, and that we see you as someone who is a dependable leader because you just exude that settledness of love, but also that confidence and the virtue that you stand on. So thank you for leading our community in that
Right,
way.
man. Yeah. Wow. Appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate. Yeah. Yeah. And you can't bring that out without doing what you're doing for us with Q Source. So it's
Oh,
just a matter.
appreciate it.
It's that little magical token that can really inspire. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous to do something like this. It's not my cup of joe. So,
Maybe it is
but
now.
it's an experience that can gain some wisdom from. So yeah, I appreciate
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, great. Well, Pax, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Q Source podcast. We'll see you this week at the Q Source table.